We're going to get started. Welcome to the Tuesday, October the 8th, Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization Technical Advisory Committee meeting. I welcome everyone. I have taken some notes from our CVTA chair and starting on time, which is clearly a first for me. So welcome everybody to this meeting, and I hope we get a quorum as we continue the meeting. Let's start. Looks like we may have one coming in the room.
I believe we'll have our quorum once I can finish moving everyone over. There's a couple people who have joined who have not responded to the request to move over as panelists. I don't know if they're having problems, but that's down to just one person, Ms. McAdory now. So I think we could call the roll whenever you're ready.
Yes, Ms. Scott, please.
All right, Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos. Charles City County, Vice Chair Adams.
Present.
Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Here.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman. Hanover County, Mr. Badunez.
Here.
Henrico County, Ms. Smidler.
Here.
New Kent County, Ms. Inman.
Here.
Powhatan County, Mr. Chardine. City of Richmond, Chair Clark.
Here.
Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge. DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky. Mr. Hudson. GRTC, Ms. Robinson. Mr. Robinson.
Here.
Plan RBA, Mr. Bushing.
Here.
RMTA, Ms. Simmons. VDOT, Ms. Rhodes. We do have Ms. Rhodes, I believe, unless she dropped off the call.
Yes.
Right.
Can you hear me? I'm so sorry.
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Ride Finders, Mr. O'Keefe.
Here.
That concludes the roll call for attendance. And we do have a quorum. We also have Mr. Van Willis from Chesterfield, who I will move over now as well.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 3, consideration of amendments to the meeting agenda.
Yes, ma'am, we have a request from VDOT today to amend the agenda to add 2 tip amendments. And Sarah or Liz, I don't know if you're ready to just give a quick overview.
Yeah, so we're adding 2 tip amendments today for 2 projects that are well known and beloved to this group. We are adding the tip amendments to add PE and right-of-way for both of these projects in support of closing out the IARs and NEPA processes for both. The projects are the exit 211 and I-64 interchange in the county of New Kent and the short pump interchange project in Henrico County. So Liz will have a full presentation for you all. Miles, I'm not sure where you want to squeeze that in on the agenda.
I think, Madam Chair, if we can, if it's approved by TAC, I think item 7, putting it as the first action item so we can get these new requests out of the way would make sense since Liz is here. And
But I have a question, Mr. Bushing. Would these 2 tip amendments come separately so it creates 7 and 8?
yes, I believe we should.
Yeah, we've structured the presentation as one, but if 2 separate actions is the preference, Madam Chair, that's totally fine.
Miles, what do you think?
Yes, I think we should take them separately.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I need a motion on the floor to add the 2 new items, exit 211, New Kent tip amendment, and the short pump for Henrico as 7 and 8 respectively, picking up with the agenda at number 9. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion. This is Joe Bidenis.
Thank you, Joe.
Second, Sharon Smidler. We need to second.
Thank you. It's been motion and second, and I think we could do a voice vote here. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the agenda has been amended. We're seeking item 4, approval of our September 10th, 2024 TAC meeting minutes. Is there a motion? Hoping we've all had time to read over those.
As John O'Keefe, I'll make the motion to approve the September 10th TAC minute meetings.
Thank you, John. Second.
Sharon Smidler, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Perfect. Hearing none. Moving on to item 5, open public comment period. Ms. Scott, Miles?
We have not received any requests.
Okay, awesome. Item 6, TAC Chairman's report. Don't have a report today. All right. I guess we're handing this over to VDOT for item 7.
That was really fast. Good morning, everybody. I am Liz McAdory with VDOT. I know most of you I know, but some of you I don't. I'm the district planning manager. I work with Sarah and Nicole, and I'm going to figure out how to share my screen, and I'll get right into it. Can you all see my screen?
No.
No?
Not yet. Nope.
Okay. Hold, please. Oh. How about now?
Here we go.
Yes.
Okay. That was all user error. Okay. So we know I'm from VDOT, know who I am and today's date. So as Sarah and Miles mentioned, we are requesting 2 TIP amendments to add 2 new projects to the TIP and STIP. One is UPC 125979, as Sarah mentioned, beloved Buc-ee's. We know about that one on 64 and 211. And UPC 126496, also equally beloved as the Gayton Road short pump area improvements. That's the new interchange at Gayton and 64. So just to jump in, a little bit of background, I think Miles probably presents this, or the TIP and STIP folks present this. I haven't been to one of these meetings in a while, so apologies. As we know, the Transportation Improvement Program, it obligates typically federal projects, federal funding for the next 4 years. It also shows obligations for anything that is undergoing NEPA to provide fiscal constraint, as well as air quality conformity if it's not using federal funds. So again, those are the 2 projects that we're requesting to add. We're only requesting PE and right-of-way because that's the money those are the phases that fall within the TIP's 4-year window. And just, again, a little bit more background on the TIP. We're coming today with a TAC recommendation. The next steps would be we show fiscal constraint. That's part of the process. Conformity review, public review, and then obviously would go back to the TPO for approval if the TAC recommends it. The reason we're here, and Sarah mentioned this briefly, because both projects require a new interchange or interchange modification, we have to do what's called the Interstate Access Report. That's a report that is conducted in conjunction with the locality, VDOT and FHWA, and it goes through a formal review and approval process through VDOT and then FHWA, and FHWA has to approve that. Similarly, both are intermingled. If you do an Interstate Access Report, you typically have to have NEPA done as well before you can close the report out, and vice versa. NEPA is just the National Environmental Policy Act. Anytime you have a big project where we're changing the function or the flow of traffic that big on an interstate or something with that much volume, you're required to do NEPA. Both of those processes, IAR and NEPA, require what's called fiscal constraint. And FHWA's definition of that is that the projects are both included in the TPO's CLRP, which it is, and that the project's at least PE and right-of-way phases are reflected in the TIP and STIP. Moving on. So just quickly about I-64 and 211 for the Buc-ee's. The major project is the new DDI that will be accompanied by new signals, some widening on 106 to make the whole thing work. And this project is supported by a recent amendment to the CLRP. So it's included, and it's there is no air quality concern because it's outside the previous 8-hour maintenance area. The tip block, we call it a tip block. So basically you can see in FY25, we are suggesting an obligation of 7.5 million to cover PE. And then in 27, we're requesting 2.7 for right-of-way. I don't recall if that's the full right-of-way or if the rest of it was not available until outside the tip block, the tip window. So that's the request, is to request the 7.5 and for PE and the 2.7 for right-of-way. That's the request for Buc-ee's. Does anyone have any questions about that before I move on to the short pump?
I do. This is Dirana.
Yeah.
The funds are noted as other. What are the funding sources of these dollars?
This is regional CVTA money.
Madam Chair, I ask that we take note of this.
So here's the situation, if I may, Madam Chair.
Oh, no. I think that the TIP amendment is a prudent first step. But I just wanted to take note of this as we have other conversations.
I understand. That's what I would like to comment on.
Well, again, I wasn't bringing it up to have a conversation on it. I just wanted to identify the funding source. So if we could move on to the separate one, Amy, and then when we get conversations about this, we can have you speak on the importance or how it's set up. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to I-64 in Gayton. It is also a new diverging diamond interchange at Gayton and 64, and it will be accompanied by a host of improvements. There's mainline improvements on 64. There's some restriping, auxiliary lanes on 295. Got to move this out of the way. Let's see. Whoops, sorry. Again, this one is included in the CLRP and for the MPO's long-range plan. And while this one is within the 8-hour ozone maintenance area, obviously you guys are in attainment, so there's no air quality conformity impact. And then the STIP block here, we're suggesting to obligate 16.9 million in FY25 of for PE, and then right-of-way in FY27, 15 million. And this is also regional CVTA funds. So just a quick summary. Again, we're here because in order to wrap up the IAR and NEPA, which are both required before the projects can move forward any further, we have to demonstrate fiscal constraint to FHWA, and the process to do that is to demonstrate that they're in the CLRP, which we can easily show, and then to amend them to add them into the TIP and STIP. And yep, that was it. So unless there's questions.
Thank you, Ms. McAdory. We will entertain any questions. I know Amy wanted to speak on the New Kent, and maybe Henrico would like to speak on the short pump. Or not. I'll entertain a motion or discussion. Yes, Miles.
Sure. I just have one follow-up question. So since this is coming as a revised request from VDOT, Liz, could you speak a little bit to the time constraints and why this is coming now rather than waiting till later when smart scale is resolved, since these are smart scale applications? And
right, the main process so they're a little bit different. For short pump, it is our understanding that Henrico is going to move forward with PE as soon as possible, and the as soon as possible would be as soon as NEPA is wrapped up, which would wrap up the IAR. So that's the purpose of bringing that one now, and we have to show it in the TIP and STIP. For the Buc-ee's one, it's kind of the same scenario. We know that that New Kent's not trying to begin PE right away, but we just want to wrap up the IAR and the NEPA process so that if and when they're ready to go, it's ready to go. If we were not, it would take the normal, we'd have to come back in June. Let's say, I think you had mentioned your question, we were discussing it earlier or late last week, was why don't we wait until June to see if it gets smart scale funding? That is an option. I think Henrico and New Kent can speak whether they want to wait or not. Again, the IAR and NEPA can't be wrapped up until they're in the TIP, and we can't move forward with PE. So that's really the only implication. So it would just push, if we waited till June, it would just push everything back a few months.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
So has been the funding source for the IAR, the 64-211?
Amy can speak to that. I believe it was Bucky's funding.
Yeah, it was a combination between Bucky's and New Kent County. We've been using our local CBTA to advance the project. It's currently in NEPA, so they're advancing right now with VDOT and Federal Highway.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of a formality. We don't have to, kind of getting back to the discussion, which I know we don't want to have right this second, but we're still weighing the option of whether we're going to advance PE prior to, I guess the results of Smart Scale. We still haven't made that final determination. We're working with VDOT on that, but it's necessary to move the project forward in NEPA, as Liz has noted. So we're comfortable with this action.
So you're not planning on executing a SPA agreement with CBTA?
We're still weighing that option. I mean, we don't know yet until we have further conversations, obviously, with CBTA and that whole conversation and what happens with that. There were still some outstanding questions about it.
So doing this tip amendment just lets you check a box.
Correct.
So that you can keep moving with the IAR and the NEPA that's funded with other sources.
Correct.
And how about 64 gate and short pump? What's the fund source for that one?
I can. Do you want me to speak to that? I don't know who's on. I can't see because I'm showing my screen.
Sharon's on here, and I see Sarah has her hand raised. I don't have it in front of me. I know we have some CBTA regional, some CBTA local funding. Sarah, did you want to speak to that? Or
I think that the IAR, did you guys fund that?
I'm trying to remember. I mean, the IAR was done a few years ago.
Yeah,
I mean,
we started that like 2020, so I think that was prior to CBTA funding.
It was.
So the IAR was funded locally, non-VDOT money. NEPA is currently underway as we're about to wrap it up. That is funded with CBTA regional. There was a SPA done to put that in as a separate UPC. And the point of that was to try to advance the schedule to do NEPA and the IAR concurrently.
And
not exactly.
Sharon, do you recall if that was submitted as a PE only project? Or was it submitted as a leveraging request?
I thought it was a PE. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
I think the NEPA was, Miles may know better, but I feel like it was a study.
Oh, okay. Yeah. PE only or studies. Okay, so that's tidy.
Now, the breaking it off, I think what you're referencing, the breaking it off to do the PE was tidy. That was easy to do.
And this one is the same story, though. You're trying to get money for PE and right of way.
We're trying to show to the feds that the money is available so they can approve and say, yes, this is feasible, that it will be built.
So I think, I'm sorry to be blending two organizations, but I think, the stop point is that if we were asked to execute a SPA at CBTA that was to develop something beyond 30% plans, that's where we are fuzzy with our framework document, and that's a project that we're trying to get that clear.
Barb,
and decide how we want to deal with that. So it seems like Dayton's pretty clear, and 64-211 is clear as well. And it would be, if someone were to come and request a SPA for those projects to go further than 30, for the 211, we never approved a PE only or study project for that. So as long as we're still using the Bucky money and local money, I think we're okay.
I think, Barb, I can help with there's a bit of a workaround with actually both of these, in that the CBTA regional is the demonstration of fiscal constraint.
Yeah.
But the commitment, the next step in actually moving forward with the SPA doesn't need to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Both projects and their smart scale applications, which at this point ship has sailed, have commitments of local dollars that could fully fund both phases that are in the tip. with those local dollars. So without the CVTA agreements, the SPA agreements being needed, these phases could be funded
Right.
with non-regional funding. So
Okay.
there's
So the risk to CBTA is small.
so basically at this point, we're moving to the next step, but nothing is committed. No money needs to be spent. We're just making sure we can close out these two major planning documents for both projects.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that summary, and hopefully that clarifies everything for everyone. I'm okay.
Thanks, Barb. Did we have any other questions? Awesome. So right now we are recommending for approval, we'll do one at a time, a TIP amendment to add UPC 125979 to the TIP and STIP for the FHWA's fiscal constraint for the IAR and NEPA process. Is there a motion?
Does Amy, I make a motion to approve the amendment as the request as you have stated?
Thank you, Ms. Inman. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Sharon Smeidler, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and I guess we can still do a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Awesome. We have our second action needed of a motion is VDOT requesting and TAC recommending for approval a TIP amendment to add UPC 126496 to satisfy FHWA's fiscal constraint requirements for both the IRA and/or NEPA processes. Is there a motion?
This is Sharon Smeidler. I make a motion to add UPC 126496 I-64 North Gayton Road and short pump area improvements as a TIP amendment to satisfy FHWA's fiscal constraint requirements for the IAR and NEPA process.
Thank you, Sharon. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion. Sherry Adams.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those that will call the voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Perfect. And just briefly before we move on to item 9, a TIP amendment for Jenk Road, I just want to say I appreciate everybody. If all of you know, I am totally like to be transparent. And when we do this, we help each other to learn what's best for the region and how we work these awesome funds that we've been so generously awarded by the CVTA. So again, I like transparency and as much as we can talk through so everybody can be clear and that we can really do the right things when we move to develop in other entities such as the policies and procedures for CVTA. So thank you all for allowing me to understand this and see how we can better understand how we can align those to work together well. All right, so thanks, Liz. Any other comments? Awesome, thank you all. And this is one of the great tests of we seeing how RRTPO coincides with CVTA. So this is awesome to see this working. And I think we're gonna have with the regional funding framework some more of that alignment. But again, all right, I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Ramos, for the next item, item 9.
Thank you. So today, I hope everybody can see my screen and hear me and all of that good stuff. Awesome. Sounds good. So we're talking about a TIP amendment for Jenk Road. It's going to be the 2-lane improvement. So that's going to include things like enhancing safety and accessibility. There we go. Background, we're all here for the TIP plan, which plans investments and federal obligations for the next 4 years. VDOT has made the request to change the funding for the TIP for Jenk Road and the 2-lane improvements. This change is really just moving it from about $22 million to $27 million. The project overview, this project aims to enhance safety, accessibility, drainage, multimodal transportation, and aesthetics along the corridor. The key improvements include safety and accessibility along the corridor with improved access to private entrances, upgraded traffic signals at Forest View School Drive, and install landscaped center median with turn lanes at busy intersections, implement curb and gutter installations on Jenk Road to improve sidewalks, including an 8-foot shared use path and a 5-foot sidewalk, adding a 2-way cycle track along the westbound Jenk Road and speed tables at Westover Hills Elementary School. This is the proposed obligations. Like I said, the total cost is going to be around $27 million. And then the requested action is that the TAC should recommend approval of the proposed tip amendment as requested by VDOT. And I'm going to go back to the table just so you guys can look at that for a little bit longer. If anyone has any comments, questions, or concerns, please feel free to ask.
Do we have any questions on this tip amendment request? All right, hearing none. Do we have a motion to accept the recommendation of VDOT for this tip amendment for UPC 19035 Jenk Road, 2-lane roads?
This is Amy. I'll make the motion I'll make the motion.
Thanks, Amy.
This is Sarah. I can second.
Thank you. It's been
Very grateful to see this one moving along.
me too. All right, we have a motion and a second. Thank you all. By voice vote, all those approved, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Awesome. Moving on, we're doing it. Item 10, tip amendment. This one Ms. Heller has.
All right, thank you so much. Is everyone able to hear me all right?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, thank you so much, Madam Chair. So the next and final tip amendment that I'm bringing to y'all is for phase 1 of the Bailey Bridge Connector and Brad McNear Connector project. So before I get too far into the details of the amendment, I do want to give a little shout out that this project stems from a successful smart scale bid in FY 2018. So I just want to give like a little nod to Chesterfield County for all their hard work getting in a successful project application. So this amendment is being requested by VDOT, and it is required because the amount of funding being added surpasses the amendment threshold. So the project that we are looking at now is the first phase of a much larger project. The project as a whole aims to enhance safety for drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians while easing congestion and providing increased access to businesses along Route 360. And to that goal, phase 1 of this project includes a construction of a shared use path in addition to construction of a 2-lane road complete with a bridge and roundabouts. So this is the tip block that VDOT sent us for the project. And we're requesting that the TAC recommend the proposed tip amendment as requested by VDOT. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take them. I'll just pop back over to the tip block so you can look at it a little bit more as you think.
All right, this is our final tip amendment. Do we have a motion?
So moved. It's Barb.
Thank you, Chesterfield, Barb Smith. Do we have a second?
Second, Joe Vidunas.
Thank you, Joe. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Perfect. Hearing none, that motion is approved. Next, we do have another action item, and Miles is going to present the regional funding framework revisions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is the final action item that we have on the agenda for today. Just as a little bit of background, a reminder of where we are in this. On the CVTA side, we have been going through the funding framework for the past half a year or so. We started looking at the same thing on the TPO side at the beginning of the summer. but we were trying to hold off on taking any actions until we completed the CVTA side, so we didn't muddy it too much. We're still going on the CVTA side, so what we're looking at right now is trying to move forward with a very limited change on the TPO side to give us additional time for more comprehensive study. Back in, I think it was May, we brought to you a summary of 6 of the sort of big issues that we've heard from the localities, from elected officials, from staff, and also that our team internally have identified. And we asked for some volunteers to help coordinate that effort. But before we actually had any meetings, we sent out a survey to all of our member localities to try and see if there were any areas of consensus that we could actually focus on and have more useful conversations with the volunteer group. And the results of the survey were really that there was no clear consensus. We didn't have a clear consensus on what the issues were, and we definitely didn't have a clear consensus on which of the solutions we should be using. So we've made a bit of a pivot in our approach. And let me just remind you all, the issues that we were looking at the time were the time commitment that the program requires from Plan RVA and locality staff, the priority for existing projects, and that's the impacts that has on new project selection ability, the funding that's available for regional projects, so the bigger scale of projects, and how much of those we're actually moving forward with this regional funding pot, funding for major bike ped projects like the fall line or other sidewalk or trail improvements along arterials, project readiness and delivery and how that's factored into when we select projects, and then finally the timing and coordination with applicants. So really, when are we doing the applications? Who are we talking to? How much back and forth is there with each of the sponsors? Again, we did not have any really broad consensus. The one area where we had a pretty general agreement was on moving to every other year for the application cycle. So what we're proposing is that we make a very limited change right now, and that would be moving to the every other year cycle, just like we've done with the CVTA, just like the TAP schedule is. And so this would partially address 3 of those issues: the time commitment from staff, the ability to fund regional priorities because it would give us 2 years of funding rather than just 1 year of funding. And then also the timing, because what this would ultimately do is align us with the Smart Scale cycle so that we have a year for regional funding, which is CVTA and TPO funds. We collect all that money and have it available for leverage moving into the Smart Scale cycle. So trying to maximize our chances to get other money into the region. And then the most important part is this would then give us the rest of this fiscal year to work through those other issues. So much like we've done on the CVTA, we can come back to the TAC and talk through the issues and figure out what the best solution is for any of the revisions. We can make revisions again to the framework in the summer before we launch the new application cycle. So that's what we're proposing. One of the other things that I know came up when we did this on the CVTA side was how do we handle the existing projects? So the framework on the TPO side right now says that existing projects can come back at any time outside of the cycle if it's for the construction phase. So if you go out to you advertise the project, the bids come in high, you don't think you're going to get better bids if you re-advertise, we can always come back and ask for those additional funds to be able to award the construction contract and move the project into that final phase. For everything else, we encourage you to submit it on the regular cycle. And so what we're proposing is that we could still hold an existing project cycle in January on the off year if needed. So that gives us as close as we can get toward the actual sort of allocation deadline to get the best, most accurate information on the shortfalls. And it will also allow us to address the needs for programs like Ride Finders, where there's an ongoing funding that we have to reaffirm each year. So that's the proposal from staff right now. What we're requesting is that TAC recommend that the policy board approve the move to 2-year cycle. There's a couple references to annually in the framework document that we would have to strike and replace. And then other than that, we're just laying out the timeline, what we would view as a January existing project application window for any critical deficits. February and March, the TAC would review, so a preliminary review in February, a recommendation in March. April, the TPO could finalize the awards, and then by May, staff will finalize the allocation program with VDOT. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. We put 15 minutes on the agenda, so there's plenty of time for discussion because I know this is a pretty big change.
Miles, I have a quick question. If you could just put some like real dates with this explanation so I can kind of grasp this in my head. So when you talk about like, so is this the off cycle year? So again, could you give me some year
Yes.
numbers?
So this would be the off cycle year. So basically what the intent would be is the year that you submit your smart scale applications, we don't have a new application cycle for the TPO. And then next year, so next summer, we'll gear up for an application cycle and we'll try and align it with the CVTA cycle so that if you're submitting the same projects, we only have to score them once because we use the same tools to score for both programs. So really trying to maximize the efficiency for our team and for your team, that it's one regional funding year. And then we would have the decisions on those, the tentative decision we would shoot for by February, which is the same thing that we did this round. We did a test run to try and get those tentative decisions in place, so that you go into your pre-applications with a good sense of what leverage you'd have available.
Perfect. Thank you. That was very helpful. I could kind of wrap my brain around it. We have Hanover Joe.
Yeah. So Miles, would there, in that scenario that you just laid out, would there, where you have CVTA and this RSTP, whatever the acronym is now, I forget already. But if you had applications for both of those funding programs, and the project scored well in both programs, would there be coordination between the CVTA and the TPO?
Yes, so that's the other intent on aligning the two, is that we would be able to better coordinate between the two programs, so that we're maximizing our leverage and our competitiveness. So if we've got a project in RSTP and in CVTA, and it looks like it's going to do well in CVTA, then maybe we pick the next one on the list from the TPO side, so we're maximizing the odds. Or we put all the money in between the two programs and really go all in on one big project. So I think there's a lot of flexibility, but it gives us the opportunity as the TAC, since it's the same people sitting on both bodies, to figure that out.
Right. From a locality standpoint, we would hedge and we would be reluctant to not request the full amount on both projects. I mean, through both programs, but this understanding that coordination would take place and that there could be some adjustments made and balancing made between the programs to really maximize all projects for that matter. I really like that aspect. And I'll just also make one last comment. I really like going to the 2-year cycle. I think it makes so much more sense. And selfishly, just from a workload standpoint, and I know from the staff's standpoint as well, it is such an increasing, I'm reluctant to use the word burden, but just a workload, it just adds to the workload, okay? And our plates are already full, so being able to minimize that is a real plus, in my opinion.
Is that a motion, Joe?
I'm happy to make a motion in support of the proposal as presented.
Thank you.
I'll second that. It's Barb.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Let me look at my agenda, make sure I can do voice vote is fine. Miles, is voice vote fine for you, or do you want roll call?
No, a voice vote is fine, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of recommending moving to a 2-year cycle for new project applications, please vote aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. All right, hearing none, that motion passes. Whew, we got through a lot of work today, you all. Item 12, Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, Transportation Measures. Miles?
Yes, thank you again, Madam Chair. This is a follow-up on the presentation that we had from Nicole last month about the climate pollution reduction grant and the regional climate action plan. One of the things that we committed to was providing you the full set of the proposed measures and actions. So those are all spelled out in your agenda packet in the staff report. But essentially, backing up a little bit, Plan RVA is developing an MSA-wide, so beyond just the Plan RVA footprint, comprehensive climate action plan. Essentially, what that grant requires is that we develop a plan to get to net zero by 2050. And the transportation sector is being coordinated with the MPOs so that we can actually have actionable strategies. So this is also happening down at Tri-Cities. And the goal from all of this is to be able to incorporate whatever the target for transportation sector emissions reduction into the LRTP, because we know that there's a clear path forward. That's the end goal of this, is to really align our regional planning. So if we set a target, we can actually start working toward achieving it with what we're doing on the other side. So the plan's approach is basically two tiers. So we have an emissions inventory for the region, and now we have to figure out across all the sectors, how do we reduce our emissions? So there are top level measures, which are sort of the broad strategy that we want to use. And in those measures, that's where we're actually going to calculate how much emissions reduction potential is there by achieving this measure. And so in the transportation side, there's really four broad measures. It's transition to zero emissions vehicles, reducing port emissions, reducing our VMT through micromobility. And so that's a broad catch-all for all of our active transportation and other micro modes, and then expanding equitable transit access. And so under those four umbrellas, we have a series of policies, actions, projects that we're lumping together as actions. And so just to give you an example of what those look like, under the equitable transit access side, some of the examples we have very specific: implement north-south BRT. And that's a very concrete project. We know what's going on there. But some of the other things are much higher level, more policy oriented. So residents living within a half mile of frequent transit service. So that is a sort of land use policy, but it would have a lot of implications for transit usage. Lobbying for improved frequency and lower rates on rail between DC and Richmond. That is another policy, but it's something that's a little bit broader than what we normally touch. And then we have other things like using Link as a framework for future microtransit expansions throughout the region. So this is not all of the actions that are in there, but I wanted to give you a sense of the range of concrete projects up to pretty high level policies, which take a lot more work. And what we're asking for is, just as Nicole asked last time, a review of these actions and the measures. We really want to make sure that what we're capturing is sort of the best thoughts and what we think is going to be the best solutions towards reducing emissions in the transportation sector. And as our regional experts on transportation system, we want to get your thoughts and input on this. So what we're asking for is any recommendations, concerns, or comments to be shared with Nicole by the 18th, which is 10 days from now, a week and a half. And really, we're open to any suggestions on this. Right now, this is basically putting together the toolkit. And these are all of the different tools and options that we'd have. And we're just trying to make sure we capture everything as broadly as we can. And then we'll start quantifying. And that way we can pick and choose from the toolkit to figure our path down to net zero. So that is the ask today. There's no action required, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about this approach.
All right, Ms. Rhodes.
Yeah, just in my review of the list of the potential projects for this, I noticed the Implement Pulse West is not on the list, and I've just wanted to see if that's something we should maybe consider adding.
Yes, I am writing that one down. Thank you, Sarah.
All right, and I assume that GRTC, I see you throughout this that you will provide some comments or at least concurrence. I know the city of Richmond will. So this is a pretty cool initiative. Anytime I see my office name in policy, I'm like, perfect. Maybe I'll keep a job. So anyway, let's review these. These are really awesome policies and actions to kind of guide the region. So your input would be good. I think, looking at it from the county and urban side, looks like there's some rural things in there as well. So please do provide comments. All right, moving on to our next item, we have our transportation agency updates. DRPT.
Morning.
Morning.
So just very briefly, a couple of workshops that are coming up for us at DRPT. Actually, in about 15 minutes, I'll have to hop out for our Transit Service Delivery Advisory Committee meeting. Is being held virtually at 10 o'clock to kind of go over our fiscal year 2026 outlook for capital and operating funding. We are also scheduling our fiscal year 2026 grant application workshop. For those of you who are not familiar, we at DRPT run an annual application cycle that runs between typically December 1st to February 1st. And so as a way to be able to orient people on our various grant programs and get familiar with the application process, we host a workshop. That's going to be on November 13th at 11 a.m. We'll be sending out registration and details via email in the next couple of weeks because we know that if we do it any further out than a month, people will forget about it. So look out for that correspondence. Besides that, I always am reminded to encourage everyone to engage in our latest marketing campaign. It's our Connects Communities. This one is another campaign about promoting the awareness about public transportation across Virginia, especially using all of our public transportation options, which we don't necessarily have a problem here in Richmond, but in general, we are trying to encourage this across the Commonwealth. So if you're looking for any kind of toolkits, kind of branding, marketing, it's all available on the Connecting VA website, and I'll have that in the agency update for everyone to look at. Besides that, just for everyone's awareness, since we're all planners, for those who are not familiar, DRPT asks all of our transit agencies that they work on what we call either a transit development plan or a transit strategic plan. This is kind of what would be the equivalent of a long-range plan light, where we ask for over a 10-year planning horizon to look at not only the existing services and kind of the needs that the transit agency has, but also how to anticipate what they'll need to do in terms of replacement of vehicles, service expansions, and so forth. The TSP is more geared towards our large urban, so that's what usually DRPT has that they need, or not DRPT, GRTC has to do in their requirements. But we are trying to get feedback because we're starting to see that there's some need to be able to reflect our guidelines that we have to be able to help make these documents more useful. If we're going to ask agencies to do this every, about 5 years, let's make sure that it's something that is sustainable for them to actually implement, and that they can actually be able to update on that 5-year cycle. So we do have a survey, and that is going to be included in the agency update. I am interested to hear from partners as well. So MPOs are also looped in. They are usually encouraged to be part of some process because a lot of our agencies operate in urbanized areas. So if you are inclined, the survey link is available in the agency update, and I would love to see any feedback that you may have on that process. And with that, as all we have for my update, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
You have any questions? And you said you're going to send out, is that an open webinar for the CAP operating funding?
Yes.
Tiffany?
Yes. I mean, Dorona, it's going to be in about like 15 minutes or so I can always send you a direct message. But yes, it is going to be starting up in the next 10 minutes.
Okay, awesome. So let's get through these other agency updates. For those who want to join, GRTC, you may want to join.
Hey, yes, this is Corey. I'll be giving the agency update. So kicking off, September was another busy month as GRTC hosted 4 public meetings and pop-up sessions, finalized service expansions for October, and conducted a board retreat in place of our monthly meeting to discuss long-term financial planning and goals. The theme of the month, however, was certainly public engagement. In addition to hosting more than 70 people at our Main Street Station open house for the North-South Pulse project, our staff hosted pop-up sessions across the network, visited the Whole Street Festival and met with community members, and did surveying at the downtown transfer station. The planning department also joined in RVA Rapid Transit Talk to explain the Transit Strategic Plan, or TSP, and field some questions. And the marketing department reported nearly 15 different GRTC appearances in a variety of different news formats. So as we look ahead to our upcoming service change later this month and the progression of our longer term major projects, GRTC and our partner localities are continuing to ramp up that outreach and public engagement, centering our projects and services around the needs of our riders and the goals of our constituents. And that wraps up my agency update for this month. I can take any questions if anyone has them.
Thank you, Mr. O'Keefe. I'm sorry. Thank you, Corey.
No problem.
Moving to Mr. O'Keefe for Ride Finders.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just like GRTC, Ride Finders was busy in the month of September. I know Barb will be happy to know we had 2 new van pools involving Chesterfield County. We had a 15-passenger van pool start last month from Newport News to the Defense Supply Center. And we also had a 7-passenger van pool start from Chesterfield to Arlington. A lot of people seem to live in Chesterfield and go to Nova, DC. Fort Belvoir has been a real hot spot too, as people live in Chesterfield and go to Belvoir. So we've definitely got a lot of that. We've done a lot of pop-up events as well. We did pop-up events for TDM week at the Bottoms Bridge Park and Ride, on the Square of Tabling events at the Virginia Department of Health. Like Corey said, GRTC and Ride Finders also did pop-up meetings at the Transfer Center, the Hall Street Library, and Main Street Station, as well as transportation fairs at Bright Point Community College and both of the campuses at Reynolds Community College. Ride Finders also met with Woodruff Company Engineered Solutions to discuss DRPT's initiative to increase van pools and employer outreach statewide. And we also forwarded our FY24 end of year van pool NTD data reports to GRTC as they need to get those in and going. And with that, that's my report, and I'd be glad to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you, John. Looks like Barb has a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
And you have a new executive director, right?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for me. Yes, it was announced last month that Sharika Ruffin has taken over as the new executive director of Ride Finders and replaced Savon Tisdale, who retired.
Welcome, Sharika. We all worked with her over the years, so that's good. All right. Thank you, John.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, VDOT, Ms. Rhodes.
Okay, I'm basically shouting into my microphone because I've been told I'm coming in quiet. So thumbs up if you can hear me, please. Okay, great. All right. First things first, and since Tiffany introduced that we have a hot ticket in 7 minutes, I'll be quick. Smart Scales Round 6. We have completed the first phase of validation, which focuses on scope and readiness. That process is complete, and Richmond District had no screen outs. So that is awesome. We have moved on to the estimate review process. Many of you already have meetings on the calendar. We are clearing the tier 1s first. So if you know you have a bunch of tier 2s, which means you have a construction estimate of 15 million or higher, we will get to you later in the month. So many of you are on the calendar, and I think at this point we've cleared 10 estimates. And then the other thing I just want to make sure that I get across to you all is we have this is big month for Henrico. We have 2 public meetings for Henrico on October 29th at 5:30 at the Wingate in Short Pump. There's a public hearing on the Short Pump Area Transportation Improvement Project. And then willingness to hold a public hearing request is out for the Route 33 9-mile road over I-64 bridge replacement project. And comments are due October 22nd. And that is all I had for you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, oh goodness, so that's 13. 14 is the newsletter. Please view that information when you have time. Do we have any TAC member comments? Nora. Nora, I think you're breaking up.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you like barely. It's so low.
Okay, I'm gonna be like, and I couldn't hear Sarah either. Okay, good. Link. So we've been working with GRTC to improve our link service. And so right now we have about a 20% not pickup route. So they're getting us a third bus, but they're also taking us all the way down to Virginia Center Commons. And so we could get this information out, but on October 21st at 3 p.m. there is a ribbon cutting for the new service at Virginia Center Commons. And so our Ashland little link service will now be getting to a fixed route service at Virginia Center. And so I just want to say thank you and kudos to GRTC for making this happen. It's something we've talked about for 15 years about making happen, and it's going to work, but I have a feeling we're going to need more vehicles to meet the demand. And so just throwing that out there in case anyone wants to help with that in the future, but hope to see you on the 21st.
Thanks, Nora. That's so exciting. Regional transit. All right. Any other TAC member comments? Ooh, hearing none, 4 minutes before 10. Next meeting is Tuesday, November the 12th, 2024 at 9 a.m. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.